The fan above spun slow, slicing the heat into thick, useless pieces. Fluorescent lights hummed above the posters on the wall. Be all you can be, the few, the proud. Behind the desk, the colonel didn't even look up. Dion Rucker stood with his feet squared and his back straight, the way he'd practiced in the mirror. He wore clean jeans, a tucked-in polo, and the last good pair of sneakers he owned. His hands were at his sides, clenched just enough to stop the trembling. "I want to try out for the SEALs, sir," he said. The colonel, retired, still in uniform like the past, never-ended, slowly lifted his head. His face said it before his mouth did. One brow raised, the other sank in amused pity. "You want a what, son, SEALs, sir? I've been training for it." The colonel squinted, as if Dion's black skin were a smudge on the window of his worldview. Then he leaned back and let out a chuckle, short, sharp, and ugly. "You ever even swim, boy?" Dion swallowed. "Yes, sir. I can do a 500-meter swim under. I'm not asking about your stopwatch. Even take to water." The room froze. The air was suddenly thicker than before. The colonel chuckled again, tapped a pen against a thick folder, and shook his head. "Look, there's plenty of fine military careers out there, maintenance, logistics, admin. You want to serve? Good, but don't get ahead of yourself with this Hollywood nonsense." "I'm not here for Hollywood, sir," Dion said, eyes steady. "I just want a shot. Shot's not yours to take. There's quotas, clearances, tests you won't pass. SEALs require a different kind of man. Mental toughness, lineage, you know." Dion stood still. The silence screamed between them. Then he nodded once, turned, and walked out. The metal door clanged shut behind him, louder than it should have. Outside, the sun hit him like a slap. He didn't blink. He walked straight past the empty flagpole, past the yellowing grass, into the dust-stained road where his beat-up bike leaned against a tree. The colonel's laugh still rang in his ears. That sound would come to him later in the night. Curled like smoke around the ceiling fan in his bedroom, never quite leaving, he pedaled home in silence, each turn of the wheel grinding the humiliation deeper into his chest. But he didn't cry, he didn't scream, he didn't stop at home. His mother wasn't there, late shift at the hospital. His little sister was asleep on the couch, a bowl of dry cereal in her lap. Dion walked past them both into the shed out back. Inside, a pull-up bar bolted to the wall, to concrete-filled paint buckets on a steel rod, and a jump rope made from clothesline. He stripped off his shirt. The sun hadn't gone down yet. Sweat pooled before the first set ended. Every pull, every push, every drop of salt from his skin, it wasn't training anymore. It was a response as dusk settled. Dion hung from the bar, arms shaking, face soaked, the colonel's voice replaying like static. "You ever even swim, boy?" His jaw tightened. "Then I'll drown the doubt." He dropped to the floor, fists clenched. Tomorrow, he'd find a better place to train. The gym didn't look like much, no sign out front. Just a battered red door at the back of a liquor store with a flickering open sign in the window. The metal handle burned in the summer heat as Dion pulled it open inside. The air was thick with the scent of rust, sweat, and old leather. One overhead bulb buzzed, casting long shadows over faded punching bags and creaking machines that looked like they hadn't been oiled. Since the 90s, Dion liked it immediately. It was broken, but honest. No one spoke when he entered. Not at first. Just a sideways glance from an old man in a tank top, sweeping the floor with one hand and gripping a cane with the other. He had a nose that looked like it had met too many fists, and a stare that didn't flinch. Dion dropped cash in the metal tin by the door and got to work. Every day after school, every Saturday, before sunrise. He avoided eye contact, brought his own water, never spoke unless spoken to. The weights clanged like distant thunder as he punished his body quietly. Deliberately after the third week, the old man finally spoke. "You trying to disappear? Or become somebody?" Dion paused mid-set. "Both, maybe." The man snorted. "Ain't no maybe in iron." They didn't talk again for a while. But the man Celeste started watching. Noticing the way Dion double-knotted his sneakers like a ritual, how he never skipped a rep, even when his muscles screamed. One day, Silas limped over and tapped the barbell. "You lift like you owe somebody something." Dion kept his eyes on the bar. "I do." Silas didn't press. He saw it in the boy's shoulders, the tension of shame passed down like inheritance. "You got a daddy?" Dion didn't answer right away, used to. Silas nodded slow, like that explained everything. "Military?" "Yeah." "What branch?" "Navy." Silas exhaled through his nose, long and slow. "Right. Let me guess, didn't come back right." Dion's grip tightened. They made sure of that. Silas tapped his cane against the concrete. "Truth's heavy. Same weight don't lift the same for everybody." After that, Silas started adjusting Dion's form, showing him balance. Control things strength alone couldn't teach. He spoke. In fragments, in rhythm, like boxing combinations. Each word carried weight. Weeks passed. Dion's arms thickened, eyes sharpened. But more than that, something shifted inside him, less rage, more aim. Silas saw it. "You training for something?" Dion met his eyes for the first time. For everything, Silas didn't smile, just nodded once. Then we got work. First day at Naval Station Great Lakes was soaked in sweat and surface level respect. Dion moved through the reception lines. Every form filled out in neat block letters, every order followed to the breath. Silas's voice echoed in his head, balance before speed. Head up, chin tight. He wore discipline like armor. Boot camp wasn't what rattled him, it was the stares. Not the loud kind, just the quiet, lingering glances that didn't blink. Instructors who asked the same question twice, like they hadn't heard him right the first time. A bunkmate who muttered affirmative action under his breath after. Dion outscored everyone on the swim test. He heard the nickname before anyone said it to his face. Token. They used it like a joke, but only when they thought he couldn't. Here, he heard everything. During drills, if he was too fast, it was showing off. Too slow, it was slipping. When he asked a question, instructors answered with the kind of patience reserved for toddlers. "Let's take our time, Rucker," one said, grinning like a mask. "Wouldn't want anyone falling behind." It was a slow bleed, tiny wounds that never healed. 1,000 cuts beneath the uniform. One night in the mess hall, he snapped petty. Officer Granger stood at the head of the table, barking instructions. Dion waited until the others had filed out. "Sir, can I speak freely?" Granger raised an eyebrow. "You can try." Dion stood stiff. "I'm being treated different." "Not officially, but it's there. The looks, the remarks, the assumptions." Granger scoffed. "Rucker, this is the Navy. You think you're the first guy to feel a little heat? It's not heat, it's dismissal. You sure it's not just in your head?" Dion's jaw locked. "No, sir." Granger folded his arms. "You're a black recruit trying for SEAL candidacy. That's not typical. Some folks are going to test you. I'll pass the damn test." With their foot on my neck, Granger's tone cooled.
"Oh.
"You're not owed a smooth ride. You want fairness? Try a church. You want the trident? Earn it like everyone." Else Dion stared at him. Not with anger, just silence. The kind that held the weight of generations. Then he nodded. "Aye, sir." Back in the barracks. He lay awake, eyes wide in the dark. He didn't cry. He didn't stew. He counted each comment, each smirk, each extra inspection at morning muster. 20-7 microaggressions in 3 days. He ran faster the next morning. Held his breath longer during cold water drills. Pushed until his body screamed louder. Then his thoughts? He wouldn't be their token. He'd be undeniable. The Pacific was a living thing, angry, cold, relentless. Oh, Dion had never known water like this. Not even the pools he trained in back home or the muddy Mississippi riverbanks. This ocean didn't forgive. Bud's Phase 1 had begun, and Dion was ready, at least on the surface. He knew the cadence of pain now, knew how to hold his breath, how to run with sand grinding into his boots, how to make himself small enough to pass unnoticed and big enough to never fail. But this was different. here. The brutality wasn't just physical, it was strategic. The real test was how long you could keep going when no one believed you belonged. By day 3 of Hell Week, half the candidates had rung the bell. Dion wasn't among them, but he could feel the eyes waiting for him to falter. The instructors barked insults at everyone, but the ones aimed at him always had an extra sting, a deeper cut. Come on, Rucker. Didn't think y'all knew how. To swim? Every laugh around him felt calculated, practiced. He didn't laugh back. He just endured. The surf torture drill came at 040 linked arms, shoulder deep in ice-cold waves, body locked with the others as water crashed over their faces. 10 minutes in, someone's arm slipped. Then another. Dion was alone. No one reached. Back, the water yanked him under. He surfaced once, salt slashing his eyes, and tried to find the formation. The silhouettes had already moved. No call-out, no head count. No one even turned. The ocean opened again and swallowed him. He kicked, thrashed, clawed. The cold was bone-deep now, numbing his limbs like concrete, filling his veins. A dark thought. Surface, maybe? They'd be fine if I didn't come back then. Hand-strong once, gripping his vest. Dragging him toward the shalah. Dylan coughed violently, choking up seawater and sand. He blinked and saw him. Chief Ramirez, kneeling beside him, breathing hard. Breathe, the man said low. Breathe. Dion rolled to his side, gasping. Ramirez waited, silent, watching, then finally said, They didn't forget you. Don't kid yourself. Dion's breath caught. Then why they didn't want you here? His voice was calm, almost gentle. But you stay anyway. You hear me? You stay. You make them watch you survive. Dion met his eyes. There was no pity there. Just fire. Ramirez stood. Get back in line. The next drill started minutes later. Dion rejoined the group, shivering, silent, but something inside him had shifted. This wasn't about proving he was good enough. It was about proving they couldn't break him. The next 5 days passed in a blur of sand, blood, and exhaustion. By the end of Hell Week, only 19 remained. Diane was still standing, and no one called him Token anymore. He hadn't earned their friendship, but he'd earned their fear. In the barracks, wrapped in a scratchy blanket, Dion stared at the ceiling and whispered the words Ramirez had given him like a prayer. Make them watch. The body breaks first, then the mind. Unless the soul gets there first. Dion lay on the cold concrete floor of his bunk, knees drawn in, hands clenched. Its sleep wouldn't come. Pain roared through his joints, sand packed beneath his nails. Every breath tasted like rust, but deeper than. Pain was memory. Not sharp, just steady. Like a drumbeat underwater. He saw his father, cuffed in the front yard, his face turned away from the neighbors. Like shame had a scent. The charges were never explained to Dion. Not really. Words like insubordination, conduct unbecoming, whispered by men who never looked his family in the eye again. He saw his mother's hands knotted in prayer, night after night. Lit only by the flicker of a stovetop bulb. She never told Dion what she prayed for. But he knew it wasn't safety. It was mercy. He felt the heat of Mississippi soil under his bare feet running through cotton fields as a boy, sweat sticking. To his back, the horizon always too far to catch. He remembered learning to swim in a pond no deeper than a man's chest. No life vests, no encouragement, just Silas barking from the bank. Keep moving or sink. Kept moving. Now, here in this barracks, in this new kind of storm, he found himself unmoored from everything but will. Not pride, not rage. Revenge. Well, because vengeance dies when pain becomes familiar. But purpose that survives even when breath dots. So he rebuilt in his mind. He placed stone on stone, forging something unshakable. Not to fight them, not even to change them, to exist fully, without permission. If his father had drowned under dishonor, Dion would float above it. And if they tried to drag him under again, they'd find no flailing, only fire. He stared up at the ceiling. The ache in his bones whispered surrender. But something deeper said, God, don't drown. Not the God of pews and pulpits. The God in sweat, in silence, fists that refused to unclench. He rose quietly, hands pressed to his knees. Tomorrow, the training would begin again. But tonight, the war inside him had found its captain. The sky was clean, the kind of blue that didn't seem real, stretched wide over the polished parade grounds at Coronado. Rows of family and friends filled the bleachers. Brass buttons glinted in the sunlight. Flags flapped in rhythm. The sound of boots striking pavement came like thunder measured. Unified, Final. Dion stood third from the right, uniform crisp, spine straight, eyes forward, his trident shone on, his chest like it had been waiting for him his entire life, and in the front row, almost camouflaged among the VIPs in white dress coats, sat Colonel Everett Pruitt. Retired but not removed, his influence still coiled inside the system like wire. He wore the same smirk Dion remembered, same narrow stare. Dion caught his eye just once. No glare, no sneer. Just a nod low, firm, and without malice. Recognition, not revenge. The ceremony moved forward. Applause echoed. Medals were handed out. Faces blurred together in a wave of praise. Dion accepted his certificate with a quiet hand and a silent heart. He'd done it. But that wasn't the victory. Afterward, as the crowd spilled toward the lawn, murmuring families and brass handshakes, Dion passed near a circle of officers. He didn't stop, didn't pause, but one voice cut through the wind like a blade. "Guess they're letting anyone wear the trident now," Pruitt muttered. Another man coughed awkwardly. Dion didn't turn around. He didn't clench his fists. Didn't break his stride. He just kept walking. Each step was a refusal, a rejection of their world's smallness. Because the bar hadn't been lowered, it had been raised. They just weren't tall enough to see it. Behind him, the colonel's voice faded into ceremony static. Ahead, the ocean waited. Cold. Honest. Dion walked toward the edge of the grounds where the beach began. The breeze shifted, pulling the scent of salt and metal into his lungs. He took off his cap and let the wind move through him. He thought about Silas, about his mother's hands, about his father who never got this day. Dion stood there, silent, grounded, carved into the present like stone. No anger, no gloating, just truth. They had tried to laugh him away. Now they'd have to live with the echo. The first record fell on a Wednesday, push-ups 2 minutes, 144 reps. Observers double-checked the count twice. Dion barely looked winded. The second came 3 weeks later, underwater navigation, timed blind swim across a submerged course. Blacked-out goggles, no sonar. Dion emerged faster than any. Seal on record. The instructor gave a tight nod but said nothing. The third marksmanship came with the kind of silence that filled rooms. Cold range, moving targets, max wind. Dion hit everyone. Center mass. Then headshots. After that, people stopped calling him Rucker. They just said him and still no full features. No celebratory articles. Just a passing mention in a quarterly. Internal bulletin. Records broken. Results confirmed. No quotes. But whispers grew. On leave, Dion returned home for the first time in 2 years. The gym looked smaller, now dustier too. The metal bar where he'd once hung from blistered hands was rusted, sagging. But the feeling inside didn't change. Silas waited by the back wall, arms folded, same old cane at his side. They didn't hug, just nodded. Later that afternoon, they drove out to an open field behind the Baptist church where kids used to set off fireworks. Dion pulled a folded target from his pack and set up the line. A Glock first, then an M4. Finally, a sniper platform he'd borrowed special just for this. Silas sat in a folding chair. Watching Dion fired every shot a whisper. Every whisper a message. Silas didn't clap, didn't speak. Just stared at the paper riddled with holes too tight to count. "You still don't blink when you pull," he finally said. "That ain't normal." Dion smiled slightly. "Got tired of blinking?" Silas shook his head. "Right there's the most dangerous thing I ever seen." Precision without apology. Dion sat beside him on the grass. cooling breeze tracing their silence. After a long pause, Silas spoke again, eyes still on the target. "You weren't built to survive, son. We're built to change the rules." Dion didn't respond. He didn't need to, because now the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. That night, he returned to base. The gates opened for him with mechanical groans. He walked past a poster on the wall exceed the standard he had, and they didn't know what to do with it. The headstone hadn't changed. Still crooked. Still chipped. Still sitting in the back row of the cemetery like it didn't want to be found. Franklin Rucker. 1969 to 2004 father. Sailor son. Nothing else. Dion knelt beside it, fingertips brushing. The carved letters, as if they might vanish if he looked too long. His boots sank slightly into the soft earth. Wind moved through the dry grass in low sighs. For a long time he said nothing. Later, they sat on the porch. His mother, Evelyn, sipped sweet tea like it was armor, and stared at the chipped paint on the steps. Neither looked at the other. "He was good," she said finally. "Too good. That's what broke him." Dion didn't ask. She spoke anyway. "They said he falsified reports, violated orders. But the truth is, he questioned a superior. About a black recruit they were trying to discharge without cause. He stood up, and they made him disappear." Dion's chest tightened. "He never said that. He couldn't," she whispered. "They took his rank, his pension, his voice." She paused. "We almost lost the house. Had to lie to the neighbors. Said it was medical." He stared ahead, jaw trembling. "All that time," he said, "I thought he'd just quit." "No," she said. "He just wasn't allowed to finish." Silence settled again. Thick, aching. Dion stood and walked back toward the graveyard. Sky overhead burned orange with late light. He knelt again at the headstone. This time he didn't just touch the name. He pressed his palm flat against it, as if willing something to rise from beneath. "You're not a ghost," he said quietly. "Not anymore." Tears came uninvited, but he let them. He wept for the silence, for the decades, for the space between metals and truth. Then he stood. He wouldn't carry shame forward. He would carry the name. The room was all wood and rank. Mahogany table, framed metals. A carpet so thick Dion felt like he was walking through fog. 12 chairs. 11 filled before he walked in. Admirals, commanders, one civilian day consultant scribbling notes on a government-issued tablet. He stood for a moment before taking his seat, unsure if he was a guest or a subject. Across from him, a black woman in a crisp admiral's uniform offered a slight nod. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes said, "Say what you came to say." An older rear admiral cleared his throat. "We appreciate you joining us, Petty Officer Rucker. We've been tasked with reviewing the cultural climate of elite units. Your recent profile and performance make your insights relevant." Relevant. Dion folded his hands on the table, calloused knuckles against polished grain. He waited. Another officer chimed in, almost too cheerful. "We're especially interested in how minority recruits perceive support or lack thereof during high-pressure selection processes." Dion looked down for a moment, then up, took a breath. "I was told I didn't belong before I even stepped onto the track," he said. "Told I wouldn't pass. That people like me don't swim. That if I made it, it'd be because someone lowered the bar." Silence. "They didn't say it in reports. They said it in shrugs, in looks, in forgetting to count my laps or accidentally locking the pool gate early. They said it when they smiled while I bled." No one interrupted. The day consultant paused her typing. And it wasn't just trainees. It was senior staff. Officers who let the quiet racism slide because it wasn't loud enough to write up. The black admiral leaned forward, her hands steepled. Dion's voice didn't rise. If anything, it got calmer. "I didn't get through because the system worked. Got through because I endured what the system ignored." He paused, then added, softer, "I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for memory. If this table forgets what happens in the field, we'll just keep changing posters, not outcomes." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, the admiral nodded. "Noted." She said, clearly. The story made its way home the way most stories do in war, quietly. a night op in Kandahar. 5 pinned down soldiers. Dion had already completed his mission. Extraction was waiting. He went back anyway. No command, no hesitation. Through smoke and sniper fire over broken earth and splintered steel. He carried one man on his shoulders, dragged another by his vest, shielded a third with his own body when the blast wave hit. He brought all 5 home. 2 months later, at a ceremony neither televised nor tweeted, Petty Officer, First Class Dion Rucker was awarded the Cross of Valor, the highest honor a SEAL could earn short of death. He became the first black SEAL in U.S. history to receive it. The Navy didn't make a big production of it. No press tour. Just a folded speech, a tight salute, and a spot on the wall at the SEAL Hall of Honor in Virginia Beach. But the portrait said everything. There he stood, aniform sharp, eyes forward, trident gleaming on his chest, the medal hanging, low and heavy. Below his name, one line, "You don't get to decide who belongs." People stopped in front of that photo. Some whispered, some stared, some didn't know the story. Others knew every detail and still couldn't explain how he made it. They didn't have to, because Dion had already answered. A slow pan across rows of training cadets, a gym, fluorescent lights. The familiar clang of weights, a young recruit walks. Through the entryway, fresh uniform, nervous hands, black, barely 20. He stops when he sees the photo. Dion. Looking back at him through glass, the recruit stands still, swallowing something hard and invisible. He leans in. "Damn," he whispers.
"Ow.
"I'm next." He walks on, shoulders just a little higher. Over this, a voice, calm, even, and resolute. "Dion VO. This was never about revenge. Not even about proving them wrong. You spend your life chasing that. You never stop running. This was about standing still. It's about knowing who I was before they told me who I couldn't be." Cut to the training field. Dion, years older now, running. Drills with new recruits, silent, focused, still faster than all of them. Dion VO. My father died in silence. My mother prayed in silence. I didn't break the silence. I made it echo. At the Hall of Honor, a janitor wipes down the glass over Dion's portrait. Outside, a school group enters, led by a young black female officer. "Who's that?" child asks. The officer smiles. "That's someone they said would never make it, so he made sure they couldn't forget." Back in Mississippi, the old gym still stands. The metal bar, the cracked bench, the buckets of cement. Silas is gone now, but on the wall,
Act.
above a dusty speed bag, someone's painted words in thick black strokes. Not built to survive. Built to change the rules? Final montage. A folded flag placed beside a grave. Dion placing a calloused hand on the stone marked Franklin Rucker. A letter from the Navy correcting his father's record. A mother, Evelyn, unfolding it with trembling fingers. And then, finally, Dion, walking alone along the beach at Coronado, boots off. Waves licking at his heels. He stops, closes his eyes. There's no audience, no ceremony, just the wind, the tide, the silence he once carried. Like a chain, now it's a mantle. He opens his eyes, keeps walking.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.